All right, let's dive into a really fascinating idea. It's a theory that was born from the rubble of one of the worst wars in all of human history, and it asks this completely radical question. Could we actually build a world without war? This is the incredible story of classical idealism.
I want you to just picture it. It's 1918. The Great War is finally over, and it has just ripped the world apart. I mean, millions are dead, entire empires have just vanished, and in the face of all that horror, people were, desperate. They were looking for some way to make sure this could never, ever happen again. So the question on everybody's mind was, is it even possible? Can we actually create a system that guarantees peace?
And out of all that hope, classical idealism was born. And you've got to understand, this was a huge deal, a totally revolutionary idea. See, instead of just accepting that war is a part of life, idealists said, no, we can do better. They truly believed that if we focused on things like morality and built strong international laws and created organizations where we could all work together, peace wasn't just some fantasy. It was something we could actually achieve.
And look, this wasn't just some idea cooked up in a university classroom. Not at all. This was a massive political project, and it was championed by some of the most powerful people in the world. The most famous, of course, was U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. His famous 14 points were basically a roadmap for a new world order, one built on openness, freedom, and countries working together for security. Idealism was about to get a real-world test.
So, what was the plan exactly? I mean, how did they think they were going to pull this off? Let's take a look at the actual blueprint the idealists drew up for this brand new, peaceful world.
The whole idealist blueprint really stood on four main pillars. First, and this is the big one, they believe that human nature is basically good, that we're all capable of reason and cooperation. War, they said, isn't something that's baked into our DNA, it's the result of bad systems. Second, morality has to be a priority. Countries can't just do whatever they want to get ahead, they should act based on what's right. Third, you need international law. Rules that everyone agrees to follow create stability. And finally, you need global organizations, places where countries can actually talk through their problems instead of fighting over them.
Now, this core idea wasn't exactly pulled out of thin air. It actually has some pretty deep roots going all the way back to the Enlightenment, especially with thinkers like Immanuel Kant. His whole argument was that states with liberal values, democracies where the people have a voice, are just naturally more peaceful with each other. And it makes sense, right? Regular citizens are the ones who have to fight and pay the price of war, so they're not usually in a rush to start one.
So with this blueprint ready to go, the world decided to launch this massive, grand experiment to see if it would actually work. This was idealism's big moment, its chance to prove everyone wrong. And this experiment had a name: the League of Nations.
It was founded in 1920, and its whole mission was to stop wars before they could start. And you know what? For a little while, it seemed like it was working. In 1921, it successfully stepped in and sorted out a messy dispute between Finland and Sweden. But then the cracks started to show. Big cracks. When Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, the League couldn't do a thing to stop them. When Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, the League's sanctions were basically useless. The dream was falling apart.
So what on earth went wrong? Why did this incredible experiment, built on such high hopes, fail so completely? Well, the time between the two world wars is often called the 20-year crisis, and it was pretty much a perfect storm that idealism just wasn't equipped to handle.
Okay, so first you have a catastrophic economic crisis. The Great Depression hits in 1928, and it just throws the entire world into poverty and chaos. And what happens when people get desperate? A political crisis. They start looking for strong leaders who promise easy answers. And that's how you get dictators like Hitler in Germany and Mussolini in Italy. These guys had zero interest in cooperation or international law. They were all about aggressive expansion, and the League had absolutely no power to stop them. And the ultimate failure, of course, was that it couldn't prevent the nightmare of World War II.
After the failure of the League of Nations, the verdict from its critics was pretty harsh. They started asking a really tough question. Was idealism a real plan for peace, or was it just an unrealistic utopian dream?
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because a whole other theory, called realism, popped up specifically because idealism failed. And it's like looking at the world through two totally different sets of glasses. Where idealists saw cooperation, realists saw countries fighting for their own self-interest. Where idealists saw morality, realists just saw a raw struggle for power. Idealists believed people were good, realists believed they were selfish. It was a complete clash of worldviews.
So the bottom line is this. The critics said idealism had some fatal flaws. First, it was just way too optimistic about people. Second, it was totally naive about power. It just ignored the fact that countries will almost always act to protect themselves and get stronger. And maybe the biggest problem of all? It had no enforcement mechanism. I mean, it's great to have laws, but what do you do when a powerful country just decides to break them? In a world with no global government, what experts call an anarchic system, just hoping everyone will be moral, well, it's not enough to stop a dictator with an army.
And so, the verdict from history seemed pretty clear. Idealism's grand experiment to build a peaceful world had failed. But, and this is a really important but, that's not quite where the story ends, because even though the League of Nations fell apart, the idea behind it never really died. That dream of international cooperation was eventually reborn. Its spirit is alive and well today, in institutions like the United Nations, an organization that, honestly, is still dealing with that exact same tension between its hopeful ideals and the harsh reality of global politics.
Which brings us to a final question, something for you to think about. Is this idealist dream of a world run by morality in cooperation a noble goal that we should always be fighting for? Or is it a dangerous fantasy that blinds us to the real way the world works? That debate is still very much alive today.